Good day, this is Bill Griffith, and this is video 5 of our wildlife series. We've kept it slow, step by step, so that each step can be explained. And we're ready to start finishing this up. At the end, I spent a little bit more time on the eagle to bring him into sharper focus, because that is the center of the attention for the painting. And I hope you enjoyed the whole series. If you have, please subscribe, indicate like, and welcome to the adventure. Okay, I'll get it started back on this painting here. The sunlight's coming down through this direction, so I'm going to work on the eagle on this side, assuming this is the lighter area over here facing the sun, and begin putting some details in here. I'm starting with a little bit of titanium white. Start putting in some details here. So it's going to be pretty bright up on this side. These feathers. I'm going to put some texture in there because feathers are flying around a little bit in the wind. It's interesting, this eagle's looking down almost like he spots a little field mouse or something else down in the grass below. Up on the shoulder here is going to be a little brighter because it's out in the sunlight. Fades around towards the opposite side. And above the eyebrow here. Trying to indicate feathers kind of flying around in the wind there. She's gonna just a little bit of a light spot right on top of the nose, the beak right there. Kind of go underneath his eye. Fascinating thing about birds is, even though it may be away from the sunlight, because feathers blow around, you'll have bright areas all through the painting, especially of the feathers. So I think the texture's looking pretty good down here. I'm going to go back to the eye, which is one of the most important places that you can consider. And kind of emphasize the top of his eye right here. Fades off in this area a little bit. Now, around the pupil of the eye, there's a little bit of a yellow tone. I don't want to get too aggressive with the yellow because it's really not that bright, but there is some yellow in there, so I'm going to make sure I add a little bit of that in there. And it kind of circles the whole eye. Just a little bit of a hint of the yellow. And I'll come back in and do the iris pupil of the eye. Now the beak also has the yellow in it. I think it's got a little more of the, perhaps that orange tone to it, but I want to bring this on up. The nostril area setting in here. And the lower beak area comes across here like this. That area of the beak is going to be a little darker because it is away from the light source. And we'll come back in on the feathers again. And want to create below his neck here. These are white feathers, but they're in the shadows. Back in here is the bird's ear is actually sitting back in there into the feathers. Can't see it like a human ear or an animal ear, but there is an ear in there. You kind of break up the tone a little bit here. Make sure the feather's emphasized. And they have a pretty heavy brow right there in front. Okay. I might come back to that some more here in a few minutes, but for right now, I think I'm going to stop and move down to the lower feathers. Okay. So I'm going to bring this on in like this. Kind of lighten that up a little bit. Go back over to a little broader brush. brush so I can get the feathers in there the way I want. I'm not going to do too much of this, but I just want to emphasize the back of that neck and the feathers. Now this area right in here, I don't think I like. So I'm going to take that back out of there. Yeah, that's better. Kind of blends it down in there. Now I'll probably come back in when I'm working on the mountains and bring that out a little bit more so it's not quite as distinctive as it is. All right. Three-dimensional, remember three-dimensional, you cannot be all one color. So now I'm going to start getting a little more dark tones as it moves away, trying to emphasize the feathers as I go. So I'm going to kind of, not just drag, but small little and it's not quite as dark as I'd want, so I'm going to darken it up a little bit. Top of his shoulder here. Remember the sunlight's coming in this direction. Featherettes coming down through here. I'm primarily using raw umberite in this area. A little bit of burnt sienna mixed into it. And notice I'm overlapping the feathers. Obviously they overlap. And because I'm letting the background come through there a little bit, it actually separates out the feathers a little better. A little more drama in the painting. Now down here, I've got a few more small feathers. Darken those up just a little bit. Okay, he's pretty dark, but I do have the light on that side there. So now he's got slightly bigger feathers sitting in here. When you're painting feathers, don't do too many sharp edges because feathers don't have sharp edges. They're constantly blowing around in the wind and being preemed, I guess, by the bird. So these are dark. And I'm just looking at the picture that I originally started with here as far as trying to tone him in. And then he has some longer. These are actual wing feathers showing up down below. And these are not little short feathers, so longer strokes. Kind of fold them in. Let some of your lighter tones show through too, because that's how to delineate the feathers. And then underneath, there's still some wing feathers up here, but they're real dark, so I'm going to add a little bit of ultramarine to darken that up a little bit. And they kind of sit right under here. And this is the front of his chest there, breast. So the feathers coming down here. You want to make sure all your colors have some transition in there, because that's what adds the texture, makes it more realistic. That's what I'm doing here, because I don't want a bunch of flat colors sitting in there. Okay, I think I want to lighten up this foreground just a little bit. It's still going to be warm colors, but I wanted to come in here and just kind of, because it is out in the sun, kind of give it a little more texture, like grasslands. Easiest way to do that is just with a brush like I'm doing. Basically just creating those tops of flowers and plants and whatever happens to be in the pasture here, grassland area. Change out the colors, because again, not all going to be the same. There'll be a little bit of that going over inside this tree trunk here. So I want to add a little bit of red in here. Again, I want to keep it warm, but also there's flowers sitting in there. It adds a little bit of interest to the painting. Like I said, I can almost feel that field mouse hiding in this grass. Okay, I get a little more aggressive on that tree trunk. And in that particular case, I think I'm going to use the palette knife again, because it does give you a really nice texture. Kind of change it up. Under the eagle here, it's going to be dark. Thought about putting a mouse or something down in here that he could be looking at, but I think that would distract and create a separate central point, so I'm not going to do that. The mountains in the back, originally, like I talked about, I was going to do some more rock work in here, but I think I'm pretty happy with the way they are. I do think I will kind of highlight a little bit of the trees on this one dark side over here. And in that case, all I have to really do is just kind of bring that in. Bring out some of the green. Kind of change it up a little bit because it's all, the valley does have a texture. Same way over here, kind of do a little bit. Again, most of this is suggestive, not a lot of detail. More kind of a combination of impressionistic and realistic. That was the intent. I think it's pretty close to doing what I want it to do. I'm sure there's some other little things that I might want to mess with, but sooner or later you got to come up with the idea that, hey, enough's enough, and we just stop. Maybe a little bit of this tree trunk is showing up right in this area because of the sunlight coming through. Maybe part of a branch. So I'll do a little of this here. Now looking around, I probably could do some more work on the tail feathers, wing feathers down through here. This area here is in the shadows, so I'm going to darken it up a little bit. Kind of separate out some of the feathers per se and make them more two-dimensional. Okay, I wanted to come back in here just for a minute to kind of make sure one more time that my proportions on this eagle is good and maybe make the feathers show up a little better. So I'm going to come down through with a little bit of, in this particular case, a little bit of burnt umber. Now that's too light. So I'm going to go back to the darker, a little bit of red tone is what I'm after in these feathers here. And he's got a pretty big shoulder, so I'm going to sketch a little bit here. His shoulders come up higher than that, so come down through here, and I'm just referring to the picture that we're basing this on, that I've shown in first videos, and increase a little bit of his bulk. Some of his wings come down through here a little further as they overlap. So it looks like he's getting a little heavier there, and that's good. That's really what I'm after. So I'm going to go back to the lighter tones just momentarily so that I can kind of emphasize some of the winglets here, and I'll come back over them again here in a minute. So I'm going to come down through here and just add a little bit of light tones where I know the ends of these feathers are going to be. So I come down through here. There's a little bit of light there. Let me darken that back up. Don't want to get too light. But I am going to be blending these paints because this is wet on wet. So I'm coming down through here, and there's a little, the edge of this wing shows up a little bit right in there. I want to emphasize. Notice how the feathers and everything are showing up a little better now. That kind of wanted to work on this a little bit. And there is some light tones across his chest here. A little more texture to the feathers. I wasn't real happy with just the solid raw umber running down through there. So I think I got my background color. So now I'm going to go back to the darker colors for the tops of the wing feathers. And I'm going back to the raw umber again. And basically what I'll be doing is emphasizing some of these feathers shapes. up into this neck a little bit here. There we are. A little more bulk to the eagle itself. And the featherettes for the wings kind of come down through here. Notice the white, or not, the lighter tones of the burnt umber. I'm trying to maintain a little bit to add some dimensions to these feathers. Colors of these feathers are kind of deceptive in nature. They appear real dark, but when the sun hits them, there's some red tones, and that's what I'm trying to capture. Just a little bit, not too much, but it does add some interest to the feathers themselves. So what I've done right now is basically created a little more sculpture in those wings. Go on down here, kind of clean this up a little bit right in here. The wings per se. And down to here. So remember, I'm adding a little bit of ultramarine blue because that will darken it up almost to a black tone. Trying to get these feathers to pop out real sharp in here. And right in here, because the sun is coming down, the top of the wing should be a little lighter. This area right here, if he's going to have a strong shoulder, I need to lighten that up just a little bit. So I'm going to add a little bit of the titanium white back into it. I got to be careful with this, and if I'm not happy with it, I'll just have to paint back over it. So I'm going to add a little bit of highlights in here, kind of lighten this up. Again, it's in this red tone. Brings that shoulder hack out. And there's a couple highlights, primarily because of reflected light, something along this edge of this chest. And down around his legs and talons, I'm going to put a couple of little something in here. Now, as I mentioned before, I could continue to do this, kind of second guessing every feather, watching everything I do down through here. But I'm trying to get to the point that, hey, it's representing what I want it to represent. And overall, it looks pretty good. So I'm happy with it the way it is now. I might add just a little bit of lighter web here where it's facing the actual sun. Again, I may not like this, but I'll see what it looks like. Kind of gives him a little more of a shoulder right up into his white feathers there. There's a little bit of, more than anything else, that's just emphasizing the wing down through here. Okay, so if you see, basically I've done a couple things on the eagle, worked on that a little bit, emphasizing the trees, more of the green, a little more work on the rocks in this area. So I think I'm in a pretty good point. So I'm going to back the camera out a little bit here so you can see the overall. Anyhow, I think the composition is looking good. The depth of field is looking good. Cloud structures are basically covering some of the mountains behind. Tones, light, cool in the back, warmer tones up front. Bring it forward. So overall, I'm very happy with that composition. So I'm going to stop there now, and as I've mentioned before, if you like this video, please subscribe. And we'll catch you back when we start the portrait next.